The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, the biggest story today, the biggest thing that happened today is actually what didn't happen today. What didn't happen today was that Dan Quinn did not name a starting quarterback.
Number 1.
I'm here, Anthony. I can hit the buttons. But I'm glad that you were ready. Because we've had our communication has not been as good as the Commanders' secondary, which is something that stood out. It's excellent. The Commanders have it. We'll get back on the same page. I've been moving around a lot. I think that's on me. But
Number 1
is that Dan Quinn, despite the fact that Jayden Daniels has been the QB1 the last 3 days and really most of the spring, he said don't read too much into that yet.
Well, in true competition, that's why we set it up as we did, to have Marcus have some and Jayden to have some. So, no great declarations other than being true to who we are. As competitors, there's no doubt that Jayden's making unbelievable progress here, and we'll have a really fun camp. But he's earned that opportunity to go compete. We wouldn't have given him those spaces and those times and those reps if he hadn't. But it was really clear that he's put in the work and he was ready to do that. So it was by intention for sure that he was able to do that.
So there's 2 things happening. 1, Marcus Mariota hasn't been very good. 2, Jayden Daniels has been very good. That is why Jayden Daniels is ultimately going to be the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Not eventually, which we knew eventually he would be. But I think when they open training camp, he might very well take the first snap. They might ceremonially, if you will, give Marcus Mariota the first couple of days or the first couple of snaps or whatever. They might split time. I don't know how they're going to do it because Mariota is a veteran. He has been around. You want to be respectful of that. And by the way, locker rooms, even though it drives fans crazy, locker rooms respect that kind of stuff. Locker rooms also respect meritocracy. And Jayden Daniels is clearly the better player, I think, right now. Nevertheless, what he'll be by the end of a training camp. Dude hasn't even put on NFL pads yet outside of media day. So I think that Jayden will be, this isn't a big deal. They want it to be a competition. And you just, what if he does struggle? What if all of a sudden the pads come on, there's a live rush, and, his feet get a little more unsettled, and Marcus kind of settles in, and you go, maybe we want to give him 2-3 weeks. You don't want to say it too early. So, look, 99.5% Jayden Daniels is going to be the starting quarterback week 1 for the Commanders, barring injury or something like that. When they make that declaration, probably closer to the first preseason game, and we'll see even on that front. But the big news today is that there is no big news today. Jayden Daniels not yet officially named the starter for the fall.
Number 2.
Speaking of the Commanders' defensive backs, the communication has been really, really excellent. And I think that's important to point out because it is crickets the last couple of years in that defensive backfield. The communication was just not there. And now you hear guys. It is such a loud group, no matter who's on the field. Linebackers, DBs all chirping, D-line, make sure they're lined up correctly. All of them dudes are just consistently yapping pre-snap, not talking to talk smack, because it used to be a loud defense because Chase Young would be saying nonsense, which is fine. It's not even a shot at Chase. He would just be on the sidelines yelling, trying to create some energy. Now it's guys talking with purpose, making sure everybody's lined up, making sure that, hey, this combination coverage, we're in the same one. I've got this guy, you've got that guy. The offense is motioning, we're switching here. It's really, really impressive. And amongst that, there's some guys for Dan Quinn that have stood out for a variety of reasons.
I think just seeing this collective rise as the whole group, you've heard me talk about ball skills a lot, and they've really put that type of work in to find that. And thinking an example of that was Quan yesterday to make a fantastic play. Those don't just happen, so you have to put the work in, to create takeaways, also the catching in those moments. So that alone I've been impressed by from where I saw us at the early part of the off-season program to where we're at now. I feel some identity coming along with the group, and Joe's done a really fantastic job, him along with the assistants, of helping support that identity. We're going to have a pretty deep crew, and Adam and I are going to have some really tough decisions from rosters months from now based on the work that the guys are putting in.
They're going to have some really tough decisions because I wonder how many safeties they're going to keep. Like, all of a sudden, you're like, well, damn, they got Chin, Defoe, Quan, Jeremy Reeves, Dominique Hampton, Percy Butler. Like, that's already 6. And there's a couple other guys that have been impressive and gotten some reps high up the depth chart that I haven't even mentioned yet. And, like, as a guy like Reeves, who's been the heart and soul of this team and is a all-pro special teams player 2 years ago, in a year where special teams is going to be re-emphasized because of the new kickoff rule, are you really going to let him go? So all of a sudden, the defensive backfield is loaded, and you got to make some really tough decisions on exactly what you're going to do back there. Nevertheless, at corner, where you've got kind of, I don't want to say the opposite problem, but you certainly have some questions in terms of who you're going to wind up keeping, and your options are not quite as lauded or rich at the cornerback spot. Versatility, always key, though, and there's 2 guys in particular that are going to be all over the field, and the 2 who they are, I think, is actually really important. First, DQ, reveal the names.
I would say some of what I was hoping to see, I did, and maybe that's with Chin. I would say it's been good to see Martin, some down in the box, but some as a middle field safety. Luvu, although I knew that was a part of his game, I'd say it was probably even stronger than I thought. So those would be some, that jump out to me. And then on the offensive side, we've worked, some receivers who could move into the backfield and vice versa. So, yeah, it's an ongoing process, but sometimes you just try it, take a look, and not. Same thing with the kick return.
The original question there about versatility, and he talks about Martin and Chin to start. And the reason I think that's significant for this team is I think those are their 2 starting safeties. And if they can be in 2 high, single high, one can be down in the box, the other can be down in the box, and they can each play the other's role, nevertheless get someone else on the field, move one of them into a Buffalo nickel or a true nickel role. Like, all that stuff means you can disguise better, and it's harder to get the defense in a bind. Not to say that offenses won't get them at some point over the 17 games, but like if you like to rock and roll your safeties, and what that means is, say you've got a 3 wide receiver set, slots to the left. That receiver comes over, now he's going slot right. For some teams, that means the strong side of the formation has changed, or tight end moves, and now all of a sudden you got to switch your safeties, and they got to switch sides of the field. Now the communication, hey, I might have communicated something to my right cornerback, but now I'm playing on the left side safety because that's the strong or weak side of the formation. Now, like, all Quan and Chin have to do is be like, switch. And maybe one rolls down in the box and the other rocks back over the top. And, like, you can do stuff like that as one example really easily because you have 2 safeties that can fit the strong and the free role, not to mention whatever other kind of dime linebacker, etc. stuff that Dan Quinn is going to throw at them. So what that translates to most likely is those 2 being on the field, not 100% of the snaps, because they have the versatility to be able to do it, they'll probably rotate them a little bit. But those 2 of the safety group, I think, will be the guys who are on the field the most. And I actually don't even know in terms of snap percentage if that'll be particularly close game in, game out when they're healthy.
Number 3.
Continuing on our pick 6 at 6, taking the 6 biggest sound bites of the day, 6 biggest storylines from Commanders minicamp, the last practice today of the off season. The starting offensive line is definitely a little up in the air. I still don't think we 100% know who the 5 are going to be. I think 4 of the 5 are probably going to be Andrew Wiley at right tackle, Sam Cosmi at right guard, Tyler Biadasz at center. That's locked in. Left guard's more than likely going to be Nick Allegretti. And then the left tackle spot is the one that's the big up in the air between Trent Scott, Brandon Coleman, and Cornelius Lucas. So how long until Dan Quinn ultimately makes that decision? DQ talking after practice earlier today. And the answer went something like this.
Yeah, I don't have a calendar date set, that I've circled. It has to be by this time. I don't want to if you see it, you do it. And but certainly at the line of scrimmage on both sides, we all owe it to ourselves to take that process all the way through. And fortunately for us, we've planned ahead as we're going into practices. We have some other scrimmages against other teams, so we'll have some opportunities that will be really beneficial for the big guys, and we'll take them all.
Those become really critical too, because let's say you're terrible at blocking John Allen, but you're really good against everyone else. That's useful information because John Allen's excellent, and you shouldn't just bench a guy because he can't block John Allen, for instance. Or maybe you're awesome at blocking John Allen, and then you struggle against another body type. Like if Nick Allegretti figures out John Allen's hump move because he gets to play it against it every day, then all of a sudden they go against Miami's defensive tackles in that joint practice, and he struggles. It's like, well, that's a data point. So there again, this is a group that is thorough. They are gathering a bunch of stuff in terms of information and how guys play together, who they're playing against, all this kind of stuff, and they'll make a decision eventually. And I do think with an O-line, by the middle of camp, you do want to have a first five like really solidified in your mind, because you want to let them start to get reps together. O-line play is a real group project, and everyone's got to do their part. And so deciding who the group is and allowing them to figure out what their parts are and how other guys do stuff and how they communicate and all that kind of stuff, they got to do that. But the reality is offensive line is a position where there's typically a good bit of attrition, and guys are in and out of the lineup, whether it's you missed 3 series in a game or whether you missed 3 games. And what they're also doing on that unit is mixing and matching guys to ensure that guys are cross-trained and tested at different positions. So let's say Tyler Biadasz goes down. Do we want to keep Nick Allegretti at left guard and put Ricky Stromberg in at center? Or do we want to kick Allegretti inside to center and put Chris Paul at left guard? Or whatever the combination is. Do you want to then say, oh, if Andrew Wiley goes out, we're going to put Cornelius Lucas there? Or do we want to kick Sam Cosmi out because we think Cosmi at right tackle and a different right guard is better? I think, by the way, right now, they would just move Cornelius Lucas to right tackle and keep Cosmi at guard. But these are the kinds of things that you want to test out and consider, and you want to know your personnel, and there's only so much time that you have to test that stuff out. They did a really great job of it in the spring, and it sounds like that will continue on some level into the early fall.
Number 4.
Of course, the biggest change this year is the new kickoff rule and figuring out how to cover it, how to return it. It's been an ongoing process. What is the type of returner that you want? And by the way, for the Commanders, they also got to figure out who's actually going to kick the football. That probably is going to go well into September, when they see who gets cut from other teams. But how'd that all go the last couple of months for Dan Quinn?
I'd say much stronger than months ago when it was first introduced. Landing zones, touchbacks, what types of kicks, what types of returns. So the preseason will be big too. We have a couple of practices, so we'll get not only in the preseason games, but some practices. And what we've done here over the last couple of days, we just split the team into 2 groups. You were kickoff one day, the next day you were kickoff return, and just tested different ways and different things. So it was also nice to have the officials here, because where do they stand? How do they officiate it? So 2-part, us to get reps, but I also wanted to provide an opportunity for the officials who are here. This is their first take, and you don't want anything first to be in a game.
So there you go. It is a rule that you're still trying to learn the nuances of, and guys want to understand it. And it's funny because, I actually overheard Terry McLaurin talking to Dan Quinn and the officials today, because Terry's not involved in kickoff. Typically, when they do special teams, Terry's off on the side catching balls or working on releases, or he's doing extra stuff because he ain't playing special teams, which is genuinely hilarious if you remember that the first bullet on his scouting report when he was drafted was best special teams player in the draft. Hasn't played it down to special teams his entire NFL career. With that said, Terry was talking with DQ, and DQ was explaining the landing zone, and I could hear Terry be like, oh, I didn't know that. So this is definitely new. There's going to be guys that get confused. The goal is to make sure that it's not any of the guys actually playing special teams. And it certainly doesn't feel like it's going to happen in Washington, because they have these guys very, very prepared. 2 more things in our pick 6 at 6.
Number 5.
Dan Quinn had Ken Norton Jr., their linebackers coach, address the team today in the final big team meeting before everybody split for the summer. By the way, cool thing they did after practice, apropos of none of that, they had family day. So amongst others, Julie Ertz, the soccer Hall of Famer, and Zach's wife, of course, was out there. But tons of families out there. They had a big barbecue afterwards, so kind of a very cool Dan Quinn family type of thing that they did after practice today. But before practice, Ken Norton, the multi-time Super Bowl champion linebacker, turned linebackers coach, addressed the team, and Dan Quinn started his press conference today with an opening statement explaining why he did that.
And as you guys know, Ken was a part of 3 Super Bowl teams back to back to back. But what he talked about today wasn't about the Super Bowl teams. It was about the lead up to that and what these 40 days are like in between, from the, what you would call the end of the mini camp into what the start of that next is. And he talked about that love, that connection, the work. He talked about being some hungry wolves, and knowing that that's where you make the difference, that you will not let one another down. I thought it was such a powerful message by Ken. You can always count on him for that, but it was just his life experience. He saw some similarities of him coming up with this group bonding together, and we had him share that with the team today, so it was excellent.
It's good stuff because it's important when you're starting something to have people validate what you're doing. It gives you that purpose to be like, yeah, I am on the right track, as opposed to fearing that you'll be 3 years in and be like, wow, we really messed up year one. We got ourselves off course and we're driving in the wrong direction, and now we're stuck because, as a staff, you get fired for that. As players, you probably get cut and you're now working for a new boss. Because you haven't had a lot of success. So to have someone like Ken Norton co-sign what they're building here this early in the process is great. It's going to give these guys an added sense of purpose. Good choice by DQ. And it also just tells you the kind of staff they've assembled. Ken Norton's a really, really good and well-respected linebackers coach, but obviously his background is unimpeachable in terms of what he was as a linebacker in the actual NFL. And he's coaching Bobby Wagner. What a room that is. Last but not least,
number 6
in our pick 6 at 6. Dan Quinn asked, just very simply, what these last few months have been like for him. It's a second shot as a head coach. He's now through his first spring 2.0, if you will. So what's it been like, DQ, to be back in charge these last couple of months?
Yeah, I would say, one, I love having this chance with this group. And I think early on, when Josh and Adam, the decision to bring me here, what I was also looking for from them, and support and partnership, that went all the way through the coaching staff. So I got a chance to bond with the coaches prior to bonding with the players. And so it made me happy that one of our Bill Walsh fellows had said, man, you would have thought you guys would have been together for some years, not for some months. And so that doesn't happen, just on accident. So I would say, man, I love the coaching staff and getting to coach and be involved. And so that's probably been the first part. And then the second part over maybe the month, I would say, I've 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, like I felt this tide start to roll with some momentum about the improvement. And I felt like that's why this might be the end of minicamp, man. Like I feel like our foundation is starting. And so like we're about to go for it in a very big way. And it's cool to see the shift take place.
We were talking on Take Command today, and Logan used a phrase that I really like that kind of echoes what DQ said at the end there, which is, I feel like they've laid a really good foundation, and I'm excited to see the house they build on top of it. The spring is for the foundation. You build the house in training camp. You live in it during the season. And obviously this process repeats. There's a lot of renovating over the years, if you will, if you want to keep that analogy going. But they did an excellent job of laying the foundation. Now we're going to see what they build. And that comes starting in late July through August, the preseason, and then into September and week 1 against the Bucs. So the other thing that I'll point out there that I've definitely noticed that I really appreciate, I've really appreciated, I should say, about this group is even though Cliff and Anthony Lynn and Brian Johnson have never worked together, and those guys have never worked with Dan and anybody on the defensive side of the ball, this is a cohesive unit. The messaging, the smoothness of practice. Like, I actually had this thought today. Inevitably, there will be some fight at training camp because dudes are going to be out there and it's hot and it's sweaty and guys are competitive, and especially with the competitive juices flowing. But, like, there is a huge respect level, staff to staff and player to player across the entire team. And that is not how it usually is in the NFL. Certainly has not how it has been here. I should speak more to that, right? I've covered this team far closer than I have any other. And in the whatever number of years I have been here, since 2015, covering this team on the beat, and then as a talk show host who goes out there with regularity, especially during this time of year, I have never seen a unit that is together and a coaching staff that across the ball is as together as this one. And again, does that guarantee anything? Absolutely not. But is it better to have that than not have it? Hell yeah, it is. So now the fun part begins. Well, first we wait, and then the fun part begins with training camp starting in late July.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.